Okay. So the Metropolitan Strengthening Communities Fund, this is where Yanni's question will sit. So Sam's coming to talk to that one. Right, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just simply that the report reflects the workshop and the direction that the funding subcommittee gave at that workshop, and that's contained in the reports.
Thank you. Yanni, would you like to introduce this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really surprised by the response to the CSO. Like, the whole idea behind having a practice facility and a place within the town hall was to save costs around hiring and transporting equipment back and forth across the city. So when we discussed around building that facility, we had a lot of discussion around the financial model, and I just didn't feel the memo really does justice to really understanding what's going on. And I guess I'm quite alarmed to hear that there's been an increase in operational costs because they've got this brand new building in the town hall, which seemed kind of counter to the point of doing it in the first place. So, I mean, obviously we're not going to resolve it today, but I think it would be good to actually get those reports that we'd agreed as council and get a really clear understanding around the financial issues going forward.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't think that is for today, but I was just handing to you initially because you ran the workshop. Just wondered whether you wanted to say something about the workshop itself and introduce it.
Oh, okay. Well, no, I mean, happy to. I mean, I think we had a workshop, we had a good discussion. I think there's a number of groups that, obviously we're in the COVID-19 phase, we're still in that phase, and it's a really difficult situation to be in. So I think really the idea is that for some of the debate around where we've got significant cuts is actually to wind that back a little bit and enable us to spend the next year working through what some of the implications are. I would also just highlight that we have an arts strategy which sets out a way of doing things with the arts community, but actually we haven't made much progress on that. And I think in terms of timing, if we're going to assess our grants against a strategy where we say we're going to do stuff, but that stuff hasn't been done, then we do actually need to spend a bit more time working with the arts community before we take those steps. And that's probably really, I think, a fair kind of summary of some of the discussion that we had at that workshop. So I'm happy with what's been put forward. I just want to acknowledge, I guess, that our community is going through the most extraordinary time. And when you look at the width and breadth of the community groups in our city and the contribution that they make to the well-being of our people, that it's an incredibly powerful thing to have the ability for council to support the work that those groups do. So just want to acknowledge all those groups that are doing all that amazing work. This is our contribution to the well-being of our city, and I'm happy to support the recommendations that have come from that workshop.
Thanks. Are you happy to move it? Yeah, thanks. Do I have a seconder? Melanie? And do I have any further questions of staff? Mike?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions, and it's not actually on the individual funding we did for the community groups. It's more on this section in terms of the apportionment of the 500,000, and I guess around where it's going to the community board areas. I'm just trying to work out, because obviously it doesn't really show what the demand is and the need. So do you know what the demand is in these community board areas compared to actually the population that they have?
At the workshop, we provided a table as kind of a proxy of demand to look at the number of applications.
Okay, I'll rephrase it then.
Okay.
Would you say that the demand against the population is greater in the Papanui Innas and the coastal Burwood wards than the other wards that are getting a lot more funding?
I guess this is tricky because...
I'm just looking at... Sorry, I was just saying, we've got very clear information that showed actually the amount of applications coming into coastal Burwood and into Papanui Innas compared to actually, the population, and therefore the money we're getting is actually, there's a lot more demand in there compared to the money we're getting. So to me, that's a fact. But the way that obviously this is splitting, we're just purely going on population and not actually this demand and need that we're actually seeing at the moment. And so therefore these community boards, and actually Sprayed and Cashmere is another one, they're getting a lot less funding, even though they've still got a lot of demand and need in their community boards. And I just struggle with how we're allocating this thing. I don't see it as fair. We've seen in the past where one of the community boards that gets a lot more funded than any other community board is spending in areas actually that don't have
question.
the need.
Can you move to yeah, John.
Yeah. Mike, no, we can't answer your question in this forum. A detailed analysis on demand, and I have to be honest and say that I think we all accept that this is quite a high level decision. It's quite a high level apportionment. The tools are high level, and there are a range of options discussed. We can certainly take away the bigger question, which is how funds are apportioned between community boards, and come back to the committee with some more detailed information and some options. But at this time, in this stage of the process, we can't give you the information that you're clearly seeking.
Okay. Well, I've seen enough information to know. So I guess the other thing is, and it alludes to what you were saying, in the past when we've put in this 500 aside, when the community boards have been given their Strengthening Communities funds, it was allocated based on population and deprivation.
Yeah.
Can we confirm that that has actually been revisited before the next allocation is done?
This allocation or next year's?
Next one, because this is obviously already sorted, but I just want to make sure that we revisit that, because it wasn't even what the funding committee that worked on it actually wanted to happen.
Yeah, I suggest perhaps the best way to do that is we will work on an exercise, possibly a little report seeking formal permission to do that, and we expect permission to be granted, and we'll get on with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry, I must walk through you, Chair. I just wanted to. My preference would have been to actually foreshadow scenario 3, but obviously being minority around this table in terms of the amount of actually councillors that represent these smaller community board areas that wouldn't go through. But actually I think scenario 4 may be a slightly fairer way, which is actually just evenly split by amount of boards in there. So I just want to foreshadow for 4, if that doesn't go through, to actually put in the scenario 4 figures.
Okay, thank you. Melanie?
This is more of a comment, but I'll do it as a question somehow. The question will be is, could we ask community governance staff from different boards, when they're considering, when they get applications that cross multiple boards, that when they look at the funding split, that they also maybe consider the amount of applications that are coming through, and if some boards have maybe less than others, they could maybe apportion slightly more towards a group. You know how we split it? We split within. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's sounding like people are really keen to have some people are really keen to have another look at how we divvy up the Strengthening Communities funding generally. And so I think if we undertake to have a look at that and how we go about that in the next month or two, ahead of the next round next year. Yeah. Any further questions of staff, Anne?
Yes, thank you. Just the city mission. We are giving 100,000 here for salaries for pardon? Oh, salaries for the emergency night shelters, and I note that we had in 2019 given 100,000 to lead a multi-agency approach to begging and rough sleeping, which has been hugely successful. Is there another opportunity for the mission to apply for funding to continue that very good program that has actually led to people who have been begging into housing and into a much more positive outcome for their lives?
Yeah, in short, there is, and that conversation's going on, over this time period right now, and we've been working with them towards government funding for that,
yes,
as well as an option to come in for the discretionary response fund.
Excellent, because I understand that one of the workers has been redeployed into another role, which means that that excellent work isn't actually being done as effectively as it has been. So that's good news. Thank you.
Right, any further questions?
Can I just signal?
You sure can. I can. Yeah.
Is it right? Yeah, can I just hold this? That's too loud. Can I signal that if perhaps Mike's doesn't pass, that I'd foreshadow another one, which is that instead of having it split between the 275 and the boards, that we split it evenly 16 ways across the city. So each ward would get 31,250. No, but it evaporates the 275 for the metro, so it just puts it directly into the communities.
Okay, so that's two foreshadow. No, that's okay. I mean, he's allowed to foreshadow a motion. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. So we have the motions that are in front of us that have been moved and seconded by Yanni and Melanie, and then we have a foreshadowed motion. So I'll put number 4 separately, and if number 4 fails, then we go to Mike's foreshadowed motion, and then we go to Sam's.
That's scenario 3.
Okay.
Scenario 3, which Mike started off with, which I think was good.
Sorry, I'm going to be a little bit change mine because I've had a chat to Sam and also listening to Pauline, so I want to make it sort of clear before we vote on the first one. What I'd actually like to see would actually be $50,000 allocated to each community board, and Metropolitan Community Board, and $15,000 to Banks Peninsula, and then the balance of that go to the Metro, which I think will be slightly less than the current amounts.
Okay, that's fine.
Do you
So
know
if
staff get
this
the
one,
information, or
yeah. So let's make this really clear. So at the moment, the recommendation is to leave 275 in the Metropolitan Discretionary Fund, and then to split the rest of the funding on a per population basis. At the time, that was, I guess, a compromise between a whole range of things. That's what we sort of came to, due to the fact that it was really hard to tell the COVID impact. COVID impacted no matter where you were across the city, and so it was thought the fairest way to do it was evenly, and that's fine. But if that one fails, then we'll go to Mike's one, which is 50,000 per board, 15 for Banks Peninsula, and the remainder, 185 into Metropolitan. And if then that one fails, we go to Sam's one, and we'll see how we go.
Which is just 31,000 per ward.
Per ward.
Yeah. Including Banks Peninsula.
Okay.
So what's the amount then for Mike's foreshadow?
50,000 per community board.
So each community board gets the same.
Yeah.
regardless of size or population?
Regardless of size of population, 50,000.
Okay.
The special COVID payment.
Yeah. Okay. Now that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Need it, Jay.
that's all right. So Sam, can I just quickly ask you, do we have any information, it might be you or John, on whether the number of applications that a community board might get for strengthening communities is the number of applications, the amount, is a good indicator of need in a community, or whether it might be an indicator of a range of different things?
I feel like that's relatively objective. It's one measure at demand, but it surely has limitations, as I'm sure we can all understand.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very complex question, and in some communities there might not be a lot of applications because the capacity of the community to make those applications is limited. So there are a whole range of factors determining the amount of applications and how sophisticated there are. So so there's a range of factors. The amount of applications is just one of those.
Okay. Anne, is it a question?
It is a question.
Yeah.
Just in terms of what we have in 4 at the moment, would it be... Is it true that we get a lot of applications for funding from community boards that actually are going to affect the whole city? And is it helpful to have more money in the Metropolitan Discretionary Fund so that all community boards can actually, so the city-wide is actually catered for?
Sure, I'm happy to try to answer that. So at the moment, with the Discretionary Response Fund for Metro, which has kind of reopened a little bit in the last few months, in a sense, there's applications to that of about 250,000 at the moment, and they'll come to you next month, and we'll see what comes after that, but I expect it to continue. Applications to Metro are often larger in quantum. One example which has come up previously is, say, the Arts Centre and their needs. So that tends to be higher amounts of those applications. So that's some background. But but the other thing is when it's one form, groups apply, and then we look at which part of the city is this impact, whether that's a individual community board, a split, or a metro. So they don't choose which one they go for. They just provide the information, and then it goes appropriately.
So it would be fair to say that the decision to go to metro would be one made because the application is going to benefit everybody.
That's right. We look at who the participants and benefits people are, and John's got something to add.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and as Melanie alluded to, quite often where there's an application that runs over a couple of wards, the staff get together and talk to the respective boards. Generally speaking, community boards are very well placed to assess quite quickly and effectively these applications. The applications that are absolutely citywide are triaged, and if they are citywide, they stay citywide. If we feel that they need to go to a board or perhaps two boards, we send them there quite quickly. So there's a very robust system to get this to the right elected member forum.
Okay.
So what you're recommending here would be reflective of the fact that, as Sam said, that there is a lot more demand coming through from the Metropolitan to the Metropolitan Fund at the moment.
I just stated what the demand is, but there's a lot more demand to Metro than previous years.
Right.
Due to COVID, as there well may be at a community board level as well.
Okay, are there any further questions? If not, we'll move into debate, and there will be significant debate, I would think. So, Jimmy, then Melanie.
Staff have any information in regarding to each community board this year, particularly regarding to either the discretionary fund or particular is a strengthened community fund, how many in their ward, how many the kind of application seeking how much money, then we grant those funding, how much percentage, we have this information or not?
Staff do have that information, not in a format that we can just put to you right now, but that information absolutely exists and can be provided. Possibly not in time for this meeting.
No.
Okay, thank you.
We did get some similar information in the workshop.
Yeah.
Melanie?
I'm surprised about this today because we had a workshop on this and it was all agreed quite happily. So I'm not sure who was or wasn't here, but anyway, and despite Sprade and Cashmere getting the least, that's actually, I'm quite happy with that. I think it's very fair. I think we took into account Banks Peninsula being smaller, but we gave them a greater proportion even with a smaller population. And I think having the money in the Metro fund is really important because you've said there's more applications. And once that money goes out to the boards, it can't really, come back in to go to big projects that benefit everybody. So I think it's really important we keep that Metro Discretionary Response Fund.
Is it a question or debate?
Are we debate? I thought we were in debate.
That's okay, you can be first on the debate. That's okay. No, Melanie, finish off. That's fine. You're the first in the debate then. That's fine, keep going. Okay, sorry, thanks. Okay, so we are now in debate. Pauline and then Anne.
Yeah, look, I know we did workshop this, but I think that Mike's suggestion is a very good one. This is a COVID response, extra money, and I think that to be distributed fairly amongst the boards is a really good idea. Our board had applications worth 902,000 this year, and we had 320 to distribute. We've got a big call, and I know other boards have got big calls too, but I think that when we're in a response time, it's localism that really leads. And it's keeping those local communities strong and keeping the energy in there up. People get very, very challenged at times like this. So I would really, really support you, request you all to support Mike's foreshadowed amendment, I suppose it is, and go for an equal split of 50 grand across every board. That's a really good, clean solution to this. It does leave a little bit less, 185 in the Metro, but I think that I'm happy with that. I think that there's enough to do a lot of good at a local level. So just remember that's a localised response to the situation that we're in, and it's a kind of a one-off. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Anne, then Tim.
Thank you. And I think the staff recommendation, which particularly 4, which I will be supporting, is exactly reflecting that localised response, because surely the larger the population, the greater the need. So I think that this is fantastic, and I think that having that extra money into the Metropolitan Strengthening Community Fund will mean that if there are applications that come to boards that, as John and Sam have said, that are going to benefit the whole of the city, then that will go to that fund, and it won't be using the funds from a community board. So I think it's a really good good plan. So I'll be supporting.
Thank you. Tim, then Andrew, and then
Thank
Sam.
you. Look, I'm going to support Mike's amendment. I think it's a very good one, a practical one. There are a lot of areas in our community that I think do need this, and it's about building communities. And I think we're actually in a very hard space at the moment, and I think this would be a really good way to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Andrew, then Sam, then Yanni.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we can say the larger the population, the greater the need. There are a number of things that play into need other than just the number of people. Having said that, I take the point that Melanie has made. We workshopped this, which came up with scenario 2. I was comfortable with that coming out of the workshop, and I remain comfortable with it today. I thank councillors around the table for taking a pragmatic and sensible view of Banks Peninsula and the particular challenges that Banks Peninsula have got, which is distance and isolation. Certainly parts of Banks Peninsula are significantly isolated. So I mean, my position is that I support the position that came out of the workshop, which is scenario 2. If that fails to pass, then obviously I'll need to have a look at whether what Mike or Sam are proposing is more sensible. But I'm comfortable with the position that we took as we came out of the workshop.
Thank you. Sam?
Thank you for that. Look, I won't support option 4 as it stands now in terms of the staff recommendation. I would probably reluctantly support Mike's one, and I only say that because I noticed the people that have supported it are the ones from the 2 boards. So they from the 2 ward boards, and I completely get where you're coming from. Mine is the fairest amendment, I guess, to do this. It evenly splits it across every ward in the city, being 31,250 if we were to reduce the Metro Discretionary Response Fund as well. So if we're able to do it in that respect, Banks Peninsula would go up to nearly 30,000, and everyone else will get an even share by their ward. And if we're going to be, really equitable across the city, we should actually treat it on the representation layout we have, which is, a councillor per ward. So I think we should be really fair with this and be a lot more local and targeted. And, there was obviously real contention at the time around the annual plan of doing it. But if we're going to look at this from a COVID lens and the economic impact this would have, let's be really fair and put $31,000 into each ward. And I think it's the only way we can genuinely go out and look at ratepayers in the eye to say we've done it properly. So I'd urge everyone to not support it as it stands now. If you have to, back Mike's one, but I'd prefer you back mine, which is far more equal and far more equitable across the city.
Okay, Yanni?
When you were having this debate, I would have had time to send this through to staff, but I just want to hold up the heat map that we were all given and briefed on, and I want everyone to look at that and think about where the needs are in our city. And the proposal to just give 50 grand to each board is completely contrary to all the evidence that you've had presented to you about which communities are struggling. So please remember that heat map and look at where the issues are in our city when you think about this decision. I actually thought it would have been better just to leave it in Metropolitan and enable groups, a bit like we've done previously with things like the Endowment Fund or the Resilience Fund, for community boards and groups just apply to that central pool. That wasn't the outcome of the workshop. But I do think certainly if we're going away from need and going away from population, that's really not a good response in terms of meeting the well-being of our community. So I won't support the amendment that's been put forward. I will support the population-based approach that's been adopted, even though that wasn't actually my first preference. But because we had the workshop and that's what people agreed to, that's what I'm going to support today. And I do think actually when you look at it, if you take that population lens, then that is a lot fairer than just 50 grand to each community board, regardless of size or population or well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie. Sorry, James. getting issues with...
Yeah, just making do with the technology here. Look, my take on this is that if the staff recommendation was an extrapolation of the current arrangement where we factor the deprivation index pretty highly on it, I'd be voting against that, because I think what's been abundantly clear to all of us is that COVID doesn't give a toss about deprivation index. They don't care. It doesn't care about a bunch of arbitrary figures. It's affected everyone significantly, right across not only Christchurch, Canterbury, New Zealand, but the whole world. If I was a community board member, which I am, but right now I'm wearing a councillor's hat, I'd be voting for Mike's, not amendment, but foreshadowed motion. And also, then one better again would be Sam's as a community board member. But this is a one-off response. My view is that council should be cutting the cloth accordingly, and that this money probably shouldn't even be being debated right now. However, that decision was made. As a council, we made that decision, and I'm a member of that council, so I own it, and now how do we best move forward in allocating it? I think that there is a sensible way that is being proposed up there. It is population-based. It also accounts for the geographical challenges that Banks Peninsula has, and it's been one that's been workshopped. As a community board member, I like what Mike's saying. As a community board member, I like what Sam's saying even more. If I was at community board, I'd be supporting it, but I'm not. I'm at council, and as a city councillor, this is best for a Christchurch Inc. approach, and that's my vote with the city council hat on as a Christchurch city councillor.
Thank you. Mike?
Kia ora. I think what we have seen actually for a lot of the funding rounds is actually the smaller community boards, especially Papanuianas and Coastal Burwood, they are the most oversubscribed community board areas, and there is a lot of need in those areas and high deprivation. Look, we'd all love to have a lot more money, and we can, and I agree that Linwood is an area of high deprivation, but actually when you look at some of the funding applications that you've approved, it's going into actually some of your areas that have they're quite affluent, like Shades Island, Scarborough, and Steps in Beachville. So actually, is the money being spent how it's actually designed to be spent? I think with the scenario that I'm putting forward is actually fair. It sort of shows that actually our community boards have equal amount of issues in there, and they actually show that the smaller community boards actually do need a bit of a help at the moment because they're struggling with the low amount of funding that we've received in the past. I actually don't quite agree with some of the comments Councillor Goff has made. I think COVID is high deprivation areas are affected more by COVID, but this actually will take this into account, and it actually gives a little bit more money to all the community board areas than what is currently proposed, and so therefore I think it's right that we put the money back into the community, but I also think it is also important that we actually leave a bit aside, which 185k is not a bit, it's quite a lot, for the Metropolitan Fund as well. I believe that actually the scenario that I'm putting forward is actually a very fair scenario, and actually it actually responds to all the community boards in an equal manner.
Thank you. I've got Jake, then Jimmy.
Yeah, I find this a little bit cynical actually. I think we've moved away from a funding approach where we had 80% population, 20% social debt, and now we're moving to population only, and now that's still not good enough for some councillors, and now we want to move to flat allocation for everyone. Even is not fair, and using huge demand in your high socio-economic wards to justify penalising poorer wards is absolutely not fair. And I also find it a little bit cynical.
It's misrepresentation of my community board area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hang on a sec. No, it's a point of order. It was an opinion stated rather than misrepresentation of your debate. That's fine. Yeah.
And I also find it a little bit cynical that that we're talking about putting more money into communities, but when the only way we do that is by taking it from a Metro fund, which actually the money comes from the same source. So, yeah.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, because I just want to remind all my fellow councillors, during the workshop, we take almost 4 hours, have a thorough discussion, you know. But today, I just don't know, you know, with a short time period, looks like everyone have a different view. So strange. Because if we review those 185 projects, we have one by one review, you know, each one detail, and we challenge or ask staff reply to us. This one, 4.4, this table also, you know, is through all those 4 different scenarios. Then we choose the scenario 2 is probably, you know, it's a more kind of fair, you know, fairness and also reasonable among those ones. If we break down each kind of community board, actually some of have 3 wards, some are 2 wards. But if we divided this 225K, but each ward probably is around the 1,500 and the 1,500, etc. You know, so this one is reasonable. So I just don't know why, you know, this whole package we reviewed for 4 hours already. So I start our original the kind of the recommendation.
Thanks, Jimmy. Any further debate? No. I'll just James.
Okay. Yeah. Look, off the back of Councillor Chen, who eloquently put it that we have workshopped this and we've thrashed it out, so I'm going to go with the recommendation.
Thank you. Anyone else? Aaron?
Yeah, I do support the one that Sam put forward, where we just split the 500 between all of the wards. It's pretty equal then, and it's pretty fair. Everyone put money into the pot, so everyone takes it out evenly. And a few of my fellow wards, including my good-looking but expensive neighbour in Banks Peninsula, would come out better off. So it would be good to see. No, why did you go straight to Jamie? Expensive. I was referring to Andrew being good-looking and expensive. So there is. That's the way I see it. But either way, this is essentially the same as Sam's one. Mike's one puts a weight towards just an even ward split. So people can go their own way. I'll back Sam's, or in my default second position would be this one here. Even though I don't disagree with what Mike's sentiments around some of the wards and Yani's as well. And Catherine just put her hand up.
Catherine?
Thanks, Aaron. Look, this is a one-off, and this is due with the COVID response and whatnot. So I completely agree with Mike in saying that we need to, just irrespective of population, just split it evenly, because I think everyone across the city is in need. I will be supporting Sam's, because if we put the population out of context, I don't see why Banks Peninsula should just be getting 15 when others are getting more. So I'll be supporting Sam's, but I'll see how the mood is. I will support Mike's and see if that passes, and if not, I'll support Sam's.
Thanks, Catherine. Okay, so there are bits that I like about Mike's proposal. I like the fact that it leaves a strong metropolitan, which I think is really important. We've got many metropolitan organisations who have been hit really hard by COVID, who deal with a range of groups across the city. And so I think that keeping some metropolitan in there is really, really important. I also like the part of Sam's, which is, you know, that even spread. But actually the wards aren't quite even sized population-wise, which is why the population basis was used in a really similar way across those. So it's very, very similar, this. And I think this proposal takes the best of both of those. It keeps a strong metropolitan fund, but also divides the rest of it up evenly almost by ward, but by population within those wards. And so I think that that's a really good compromise. And let's also remember that this isn't rubber stamping a staff recommendation. This is the guidance that we gave staff to put forward to this meeting in our workshop at the time. And it's also our commitment to the community that we made during the annual plan process. Being that there are 3 now options for number 4, what we don't want to do is councillors as a committee, is be left in the position where none of them are acceptable. So what I'm intending to do process-wise is to use the foreshadowed motions each as amendments, because I think that one makes much more sense, because otherwise there's risk of none of them getting a majority. So what we'll do is use... It doesn't really... No, well, Mike's was the first one to go. So that will be the one that is put first as an amendment.
Mine, but the fallback position would be Mike, so I'm just thinking about fairness.
Okay, so if we want to do it that way. Is anyone else happy with that? Okay, so what we will do first though is we will move the other one. So it's been moved by Yanni, seconded by Melanie. I'd like to put motions 1 to 3.
So you're doing the staff recommendation, or you're not doing that?
Yeah, I will leave number 4, the complicated bit, for afterwards. Let's get through the straightforward stuff, which is the stuff that is actually allocating the current funding to groups. So all in favour of numbers 1, 2 and 3, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. And any against? Right, that's carried. So now we'll move Sam's motion as an amendment, which is with all of the funding going on an even split to community boards with no Metropolitan.
It's actually 31250.
31250.
Per ward.
Per ward.
Just a tiny
Sam, just quickly. Other Sam. Yeah. I'm kind of trusting that.
Kind of my job, but...
Okay. Okay.
Can we see those 3 amendments in one? Yeah. So we can see all 3.
Can we see all together? So Sam's, do you have I think Catherine indicated, no? Yep, that she was going to second that one. So this one is approving the apportionment of an additional 500,000 added through as follows: 31250 per ward with none to the Metropolitan. And I will just put that amendment, since we've had a decent, robust debate. All in favour of that, please say aye.
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 All those against? No.
Division.
Okay. Division, thank you. I think we'll need 3 of those. Or 2 of them.
Councillor Galloway. Councillor Johansson. No. Councillor Turner.
No.
Councillor McClellan.
No.
Councillor Major.
Yep.
Councillor Goff.
No.
Councillor McDonald.
Yes.
Councillor Kewen.
Yes.
Councillor Cotton. Councillor Davidson. Councillor Scandrett.
Yes.
Councillor Chu.
Yes.
Councillor Coker. Councillor Templeton.
No.
Councillor Daniels.
No.
Councillor Chin.
No.
And the Mayor.
No.
Thank you very much.
What are the numbers?
Just counting.
12-5.
12-5.
4 and 12 against.
Okay, so clear that lost. And now we move to Councillor Davidson's amendment.
Just quickly, I'd like to just change B to 20,000.
Okay, and Pauline expect. Okay.
That looks very, very suspicious.
That's politics for you. That's fine. Andrew, Pauline, were you seconding that one? Yep. Okay, so we have a.
Just explain that, because I've lifted all the community boards up, and it's not fair that Lee Banks been lynching.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. It does make it makes sense in context of that resolution. Absolutely.
Can we just get clarity
If I
on?
may ask a question. But this one, how much percentage allocate to the
Metropolitan.
Yeah.
Yep.
180,000. 180,000.
180. Sam.
180,000 to the Metropolitan.
Yeah, we're just checking that with Sam.
Okay, so reduce amount.
Yep.
For the 275 to 180.
Okay, so let's stop the discussion. We've had the debate.
Money back in the community.
We've had the debate.
So yeah, there's 180 for Metro, which is 36%.
Okay. Aidan, can you add that amount in? So the remainder, yeah, 100.
Can you just scroll up so we can see the bottom amendment as well?
Mine's scenario 3,
James. Pauline, you've seconded one amendment, so you can't move your own. Yeah.
Someone else second Mike's.
Okay. Yeah, you only get to move or second one amendment. Nope.
We know that. What, special class?
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to put Mike's amendment, which is 50,000 to each community board regardless of size, 20,000 to Banks Peninsula, and 180 to the Metropolitan Discretionary Response Fund. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Those against?
No.
Division?
Division.
Division, please, Aidan.
The Mayor. Councillor Turner.
Yes.
Councillor Chen.
Yes.
Councillor Chu.
Yes.
Councillor Koga. Councillor Cotter.
Yes.
Councillor Daniels.
No.
Councillor Davidson.
Aye.
Councillor Galloway.
No.
Councillor Goff.
No.
Councillor Johansson.
No.
Councillor Kewen.
Mike's there.
Councillor MacDonald.
Yes.
Councillor Major.
Yep.
Councillor McClellan.
No.
Councillor Scandrett.
Yes.
Councillor Templeton.
No.
It's 9 in favour and 7 against.
I could declare that carried.
I still think mine was better.
It was more equal.
Okay. Right. There's a difference between equity and equality. Let's just get that one clear. Okay, so...
Because that was an amendment, it needs to be a substantive motion at the end.
Okay, so we now need to, because we have, that was done as an amendment, we just need to...
So I obviously won't be supporting that, so I don't know, you can take my moving that one out and someone else can do it.
Yeah.
The mover and seconder of the amendment.
Mover and the seconder of the amendment will become the substantive. So we actually, because it was an amendment, we need to confirm it as a substantive. Process them. No, but the problem... process-wise, because we did 1, 2 and 3 first, they were the substantive. Normally you would do the amendments first. I should have done that first for the 4 and then made the new 4 the whole lot.
So you just need to get the appropriate wording for 4, so you need to change the numbers and stuff because it's all out of kilter. So just let's get the numbers all sorted.
No. The substantive is the amendment for 4 is the amendment I put and was passed. So it just needs to now be moved.
It just needs to be moved as a substantive. That's all. It's just a process thing. We will we'll make sure that the mover and seconder is changed on that because it is Mike and Pauline, so it's just exactly the same as the amendment, and we don't need to talk to it. I'm assuming we don't need a division. I'm assuming everyone's votes are the same, but all in. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So moving the amendment now, the carried amendment as the substantive. All of those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Jake and Yanni. Okay. Okay, so is there anyone changing their vote from the amendment vote? Just Leanne.
No,
okay.
It's a substantive now passed, so
It's a majority, yeah. Please hands up if you would like your vote recorded against. Yanni, Jake, James, and Anne. And Melanie. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. It was a bit messy.